Phyllis, and I'm not sure that brains actually do work on the Friday before Thanksgiving break. Thank you all for being here. You know, it is the Friday before Thanksgiving break, and it is kind of miserable outside. So I really, really appreciate you coming. A couple years ago, ICAT put out a rather unusual call. So every year we have a call for proposals, as all of you know. And every year we also have some little special calls that are very specific. And a couple years ago we put out a very specific call in conjunction with the Innovation Campus to look for proposals that would in some way connect the campuses of Virginia Tech together. And today we're going to talk about the successful proposal from that call. And it's amazing how unexpected proposals are. You know, I mean, right now you might even have in your mind like, oh, here's how I would respond to a proposal to connect multiple campuses. I don't think you would think about what these folks thought of for their response. So let's get started talking about it. Just first, just some brief introductions, and as usual with ICAT, what your background is.
I'm Tanner Up the Grove. I'm the immersive audio engineer at ICAT, and I'm involved helping with the technology on this project, making sure that things sound good and things get connected and work.
I'm David Franisich. I am the multimedia designer at ICAT, and on this project, acting as a visual artist and designer, doing visual media, helping with the interactive art installation that we're creating.
Hi, I'm Lisa McNair. I'm Deputy Executive Director at ICAT. I'm Professor in Engineering Education, and I'm instructor of the ID Pro class, Interdisciplinary Projects, which is featured a little bit in this project as well.
And there are a couple people missing. I was wondering if you could just tell me who those are.
We are missing today Julia Basso, who is a neuroscientist and a dancer, and she is in HNFE, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think she's in psychology or neuroscience.
She is a neuroscientist and a dancer, and she's in human nutrition, health nutrition. Please, someone.
Human nutrition, food, and exercise.
Thank you. And food and exercise. That is her home department.
Yeah.
She's in HNFE. I know, we're all over the place. Yeah.
Which is terrific. And you're missing one more person.
Hiromi Akamura, who is in graphic arts.
And there's also an electrical engineer in there somewhere.
And there's an electrical engineer, Dusan Boroyevich, who is retired now, but he's in the electrical and computer engineering department.
All right, as my students always say, he caught emeritus.
He caught emeritus, yeah.
So this is quite an eclectic team, put together this really, really interesting proposal. So I was wondering if one or all of you could sort of describe to us what actually the project is. What did you propose to do, and where are you on it?
Okay, we actually have some PowerPoints I'll sprint through. And y'all been staring at this one, but this is basically where we started, in a backyard, basically, with carvers from the community, sort of dreaming about what could we do if we could capture sculptures in the process of making the art and share them with each other and with other people across the world in different places, and expand them and rotate them and be able to walk around them, walk through them. And seemed like it was a wild dream, and I started talking to Tanner and David, and they're like, maybe we could do that. And so that's sort of where we started. So you've got sort of the before and now, and on this slide, and you can go through and just really quickly, our data collection, we worked with the Backyard Stone Carvers, and they helped us recruit a whole lot of carvers. Eventually, we had 20 carvers who were carving 4 at a time with EEG caps on their heads, recording brain data. And at those sessions out in Newport, at the community center there, we had Tanner, David, a whole crew of graduate students, ID Pro students, to collect that data. And so that's some of those pictures.
And can I add that the data there's a lot of data. There's the EEG brain data. We've collected real photo and video and audio data as well, including spatialized audio, so we can kind of recreate what happened there with 3D sound and really taking the visuals and doing interesting work with what the stone carvers were doing.
Yeah, the sound capture is amazing. The first time we presented this at the Science Festival last fall in 2023, we had a live carver over there, and I was at a table kind of playing with the kids and everything, and the video was going with Tanner's capture of sound and David's capture of video, and the live carver had taken a break, and I was talking to a kid, and I was like, yeah, there's a carver over there, and it wasn't. It was just Tanner's sound. So amazing. And we're still in data analysis, but there's already been 2 phases presented at the IE Pro Showcase and also at a couple of conferences that Julia has gone to in her field. And some of the early results are showing that we can see brain activity changes during different phases. So an at-rest phase, a synchronizing phase where everyone's being directed to do the same thing, and then free carving. And so we can really see distinct differences on average and in individuals across that. And combined with some qualitative data that Julia's also collected in the students and her team has analyzed, shows increases in the sense of well-being, which is central to her research agenda. And this last slide is where we are now. We're preparing for the grand opening of the Innovation Campus on February 27th and 28th, where we will have 4 exhibits going simultaneously at Innovation Campus in Alexandria, Torpedo Factory in Alexandria, Taubman and Roanoke, and here at the Cube. And we have a open call for artists to bring, to exhibit their sculptures there. And as throughout this whole project, it's all about please touch, please listen, please experience in many different ways.
So could you guys describe kind of what the experience will be like to go to this installation? It's going to be out for a while, as you said, in the Torpedo Factory and in the Taubman, but it's also going to have that one night. So what is this experience like?
We have pictures of a prototype of what the experience is like, kind of, that you can see. It's going to be a very rich installation. There's the environment itself, the room itself, at each of these venues will have multiple displays or walls projected upon, showing visualized data, showing real stone carver data. So we're taking the real video and also some things we generate and display it on the walls. There's going to be spatialized audio as well. Each of these venues also has lots of loudspeakers, so for me that's very exciting. And taking some of the data and turning it into sound, so maybe being able to interpret the data in a way that was not possible before, or understand what's happening in a different media. So that's kind of on the outside of these spaces. On the interior, there's a station. Should I hand off to you?
Sure. There's I don't know, we've been calling it a kiosk or a station or something, but there's basically a central object that's kind of like a tabletop where there's a stone sculpture on one end and then a hand tracking device on the other side, and in between is a screen that's showing multiple things. And so there's a 3D virtual representation, not representation, a 3D virtual point cloud of the local sculpture that's being sent to one of the other sites, and then the same thing coming back from one of the other sites. And then with the hand tracking devices, you can interact with the virtual sculptures at a distance, and also if people are putting their hands on the sculptures and touching, you can interact with them at a distance as well. We learned a lot about the interaction at the Science Festival. This was at the Science Festival, was the prototype set up in the Cube. People had a lot of fun with it, and seems like it's going to be pretty interesting.
So you put your hands on this rock that's right there, and then what happens at the other side?
People can see your hands on the rock.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are interacting with the hand tracking device, they can interact with the point cloud that you're touching, also your hands, and it also sends vibrations to the stone that you're touching. So there's this haptic, and there's also an ultrasonic haptic device, which we forgot, with the hand tracking, that you can sort of feel the stone.
Great. So like if there is a sculpture here and you're touching the actual sculpture and I'm in Alexandria, there is a combination of a visual screen, it's not up there right now, where you can see the sculpture that's in the other place. And then there's also a haptic device that actually just kind of blows air up, and they're laughing at me, and it's that simple,
kinda
really.
how it feels
And
like.
you can, we can program it so that it mimics sort of the shape of what of what is in the other place. And there's this great thing with the senses where if you're looking at the screen and kind of feeling it, your senses come together to imagine what it's like. And so as you're doing that with the virtual piece and you're holding the sculpture, it might vibrate, it might shake, it might something like that.
What made you guys think about using this kind of haptic connection between multiple sites? Why not just use audio and video? What is the haptic for?
There's a lot of iteration in thinking about that. One is purely pragmatic. If we have thousands of people coming to experience this exhibit, this is a way you can touch something without actually touching something and get an impression of it. It's also dynamic in that, yes, it generates these little puffs of air, but we can program it to take in some way, the shape of something. It's not going to ever be precise or actually feel like a stone, but to get that impression with air, it's this nice sort of ephemeral feeling that matches well with the aesthetic visually. So they're paired together with the visual elements. And you're seeing some pictures here. We're relying a little bit on some technology called point cloud, which takes these 3D objects and makes a scan of them with these kind of dots as a representation of what it is. So I think that pairs nicely with this air haptic as well, in that there's an ethereal sort of feeling to both of them.
And as far as allowing people to connect across distance, there's been a lot of, in VR and MR, XR, there's a lot of work about how do you get this real experience of something, and these haptic devices that you can either wear or, I don't know, they're all like clunky and heavy and lots of wires and things like that. So this device is a very elegant way to be able to feel some sort of sense of a physical object at a distance, without, it has very low barrier to using it too, which you just put your hands in it and you can see a representation of your hands, and then you can feel the sensation.
Tanner said it was iterative, and it really has been. This is one of the big learning pieces for me, because this was inspired like way back by Darcy Meeker, who was a sculptor, and she had signs on her sculptures that said, "Please touch." And so usually you go into a museum and there's actually a guard there making sure you don't touch. But this was, "Please touch a sculpture," and I've always been fascinated by that very tactile, immediate, direct interaction with sculpture. And the iterations were sort of about what's real, what is experiencing art with multiple senses at the same time. And so we just had great conversations, and at the beginning, I remember thinking, this doesn't feel anything like a stone. But then you start thinking, well, what is like feeling art? What is the process of art? And again, that's part of what Julia's studying too, with the neuroscience piece of how is our sense of well-being, how is our sense of connection with arts, with the art process, and in this case with other people happening. And there's a range of things that can affect that.
Yeah, there's sort of, with the haptic, it seemed like there was sort of there's a connection, and you described before the connection between the sculptor and the stone, and that intimate connection that you have here. And then again, the purpose of the project was to show that, but also to show the connection across people, across distance. And as you just said, that's where sort of the EEG came in, is that connection happening? And so I was wondering, and it's sort of it's a very leading question, but just about this empathetic connection across distance, because we're on Zoom every day, and there's almost no empathetic connection. It's just staring at a two-dimensional screen. So I didn't know if you guys had thought a lot about that, but I certainly felt it when I was using the installation.
That's good to hear. One thing is that when you do touch the rock or you touch the virtual piece, is you see your own hands. And so in a way, you're very immediately conscious of yourself and your interaction with the space. And then when someone else's hands come into the screen, the first time I was like, ooh, and what are y'all's?
Yeah, I think we're sort of discovering some of those things now after building it out, and I do think that seeing someone else's hands and your hands together is really powerful. With Zoom, everyone's just head and shoulders in a box, and this is a completely different type of connection that it takes a few moments to get used to how to understand it, and that there might be, oh, there is somebody there. I see the hands moving. They're making a gesture at me. What was that? So there can be some playfulness, and I think that is the part that emerges by just hands and not seeing face or other body parts. That'd be I think we're still learning, and we're getting there.
Well, and you saw that playfulness the other day. Do you want to describe? So in here, there's Studio 72 came over and interacted with it, and what happened?
They organically started playing rock, paper, scissors across the two kiosks without being told what to do. It was pretty impressive. They got it right away.
David, you were going to say something?
I was to say, yeah, that anecdote, that's all.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that we don't have here is that we have in Zoom is we're not talking to each other, we're not explaining things, and we've had to resist that temptation too. I mean, again, I would have to make the confession, I want to put it like signs and instructions, but I don't want it to be like a museum exhibit, and so we've really helped push each other to not, engage those senses that we typically do.
Wanted really to have a sense of exploration, wanted people to, didn't want it to be obvious right away necessarily what you do, but when you start interacting with this thing, it is sort of magnetic in a way, and that people want to find out more about how it's working and what's going on, and then when you have people interacting across distance, they stay there even longer and try to really get a sense of it.
Yeah, it's really going to be neat to see what happens when it's in 4 locations and how that works. From a technological as well as... well, so I have to ask the classic last question. If you were to describe this project as a donut, or it looks like even a cracked egg.
On a donut.
How would you
Cracked
describe
egg
this
on
project?
A donut egg sandwich.
A donut egg sandwich.
Is that the answer?
Yeah, I even knew this question was coming, and I didn't prepare. I was just going to do the performance part.
4 donuts,
Maybe
4 sites. I don't.
Yeah.
Nice.
Maybe a cinnamon twist. Or you got the science and art kind of informing each other and going along.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe, so donuts have all these different properties if they're frosted and baked and yeast and all that stuff. So they have a lot of different ingredients that have to cohere and connect and react with each other in ways that are interesting and delicious.
Well, with that, I'll turn it back over to Phyllis to see if you guys have any questions. Thank you very, very much for your presentation.
Thank you so much for sharing. I am fascinated to see how it will work across 4 locations. Can you imagine? I'm excited. David is more nervous than I am, but I have faith. What questions do we have in the room or online?
A very cool project. I'm curious, when it's opening at the Taubman, and what was the air haptic device that you used? And I also like the duct tape on the back.
Yeah, it was very much a prototype.
Yeah.
Something that's Taubman the 3rd week of February, I believe. They still haven't given us.
Is it second? Yeah, it's second week of February, but yeah, in there.
14th? It is the 14th now?
Yeah.
Is that set? Okay. There was waffling between that. So it's opening the 14th, and that'll be connected to the Torpedo Factory Art Center. So those 2 sites will be connected together. I'll let Tanner talk about the haptic device.
Sure. The haptic device is the UltraLeap Haptics Kit. So it's a development kit. It's not a full commercial product quite yet, but they also make the hand tracking hardware and a suite of software that can drive these things together.
It's basically an array of ultrasonic speakers that create interference in the air, right? Is that
Yep.
a correct?
Beam forming.
Yeah.
How big is each speaker that they can feel that kind of degree of?
Each one's about a centimeter. Yeah, and the whole array is probably 18 inches by 8 inches.
Yeah, it's like that big. And the interaction zone is actually surprisingly high above the device. It's about like 12 inches is kind of the sweet spot. But you can go up and down from there, and it tracks the hand and puts little sensations on your hand. It's really wild.
And what, do you know what degree of fidelity, like how fine tuning they can feel?
Not high. The stone that you're looking at on the screen, you'd never ever be able to feel that sort of those edges or crispness. We spoke with a researcher from Japan, I forgot his name, who described it as sort of slimy feeling, which I think is kind of interesting and accurate. It's just air, but it does have sort of this viscosity to it that, because the air is also continuously changing over and pulsing, so it's not a consistent, rigid thing. It is sort of very ephemeral feeling.
Other questions?
Thank you all. It was lovely to accompany CID students over and see this working in action. I'm thinking about future applications of this, and so that's going to be my question: what future applications, might there be for something like this? And one idea that I have is in kitchens. People working together with their hands across distance to make something and be together. And especially as I think about the dorm, I think about like people who are away from home for the first time and have access to a kitchen and are like, oh, I would like to make myself spaghetti, but I don't know how. Dad, Mom, help me. So I wonder if you have other ideas for future applications.
As far as this specific gathering of technology and ideas, maybe not necessarily. I try to think about art in that way. We're trying to make it very much an art installation. But as far as some of the technology involved there, which maybe gets to more what your question is, yeah, for sure. I imagine collaboration across distance, where and people were trying to do this with virtual reality and things like that. With varying levels of success, it really depends on people's buy-in and the fidelity and things like that.
I can even think of, a while back I heard about a Japanese artist who had created a way to connect with his mother on a regular basis when he was here and she was in Japan, and it was around her tea, when she was having tea, and the time differences are almost opposite, and so there could be a time when she was having tea and something would be communicated, like his weather or her weather to him, and so it wasn't so much like a very specific recipe how to make a thing, but actually that kind of connection that is more than just a call or a video, but an actual feeling. And I think as we're able to develop this technology more so that it can be more interactive, then we can do more things like that. One person who came through the Science Festival said, wouldn't it be cool if we could do something like the Helen Keller kind of water thing? And if you're doing that, somebody can actually interact with you. And so there's some sense, again, we have to use sense of touch.
Yeah, I think from this project and many similar sort of immersive sensory projects that have come up, accessibility is becoming kind of a sub-theme that's very exciting.
Right.
And this one, and so just kind of coming off of that, this piece, if you're visually impaired, there's still a lot to offer. There's multi-channel audio to hear, there's the haptic interface to feel. And even in our search for haptic devices, to a question earlier, there are many out there for the visually impaired, but maybe not as many as you would think. So maybe looking into applying some of these towards accessibility questions.
And the last thing is really, we have a protocol that by the end of the data collection, I thought we had a great protocol, and I would love to get funding to repeat the experiments with this tight protocol and more deeply explore some of Julia's hypotheses about sense of well-being and sense of connection through different art processes.
I also saw on your slide you have the Virginia Commission on the Arts. Do you want to say something about
Oh yeah, we got a small grant from the Virginia Commission on the Arts to bring in sculptors from the Southwest Virginia community and the Alexandria community, and so we have an open call. They'll submit their sculptures and then do live demos with people visiting the installations and live demos in February. So that was really nice to be able to start with the community and also bring community back in at the end.
Can you talk about I'm fascinated by the fact that there's this sense of connection across space, and the fact that it's just hands. Can you talk about that choice? And that like I want to, like there's a curiosity with that, like whose hands am I touching? So the question of anonymity and human connection.
I think that came out of the desire to be able to touch a stone sculpture across space, across distance. And as we were working through it, it just made sense to just focus on the hands and this connection. Like, can you just have connection with a thing or with somebody else just through this tactile interaction, and not I see somebody's face walk up to the installation, or know who else is in the space. And it kind of created this really other sort of mysterious component to the installation where you might know that it's connected to the other site, but you don't know what that means until somebody else comes up and starts interacting with it.
And one thing we haven't talked about a lot is the immersive activity that will be going around you when you walk into the installation, which is again the sound, like I said, that is just so there. You really feel like you're in a studio. And then also the projection, and it'll almost be life-size maybe, so you can almost feel yourself in a studio. And then that will segue into sonified representations of the data. So we'll also have connection with the scientists and with the carvers themselves through sonified and visual immersive experiences as well.
We are at time, so I'm going to, we'll stop. I know that our folks will stay here and answer any additional questions that you all have and continue the conversations, and I hope you'll continue to have those. First off, I want to thank you all for bringing this, and what a cool project. I mean, project just seems not in the right word. What a cool installation, what a cool theme and directions that we're going. So thank you for that. Thank you all for being here as well, and I hope that your Thanksgiving is full of gratitude.
Thanks, everyone.
You know, the moment in Charlie Brown Christmas where Charlie Brown screams, "That's hit," and Lucy tumbles over backwards.
Mm-hmm.